I don't think
you should read Liam Byrne's note. Liam Byrne's note in the Treasury that there was no money left.
Literally doing the Greg Hands meme. Because you know Greg Hands still has the Liam Byrne note in his wallet that he carries around everywhere. This shows you how right-wing these Liberal Democrat people are. They're very happy to parrot conservative nonsense, economically illiterate, bogus conservative nonsense, if they think that it's electorally viable for them.
Joining us now is Liberal Democrat Christine Jardine, MP for Edinburgh West in Scotland. Welcome, Christine.
Hello. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you for joining us. I know it's been a very busy week for the Lib Dems. You've unveiled your new battle bus and we've seen that Ed Davey's hitting the road, or let's be honest, hitting the water. We're really keen to understand just what the Lib Dems stand for in this election. So what's the message you're trying to get out to voters?
What we want to get out is that in so many parts of the country, if you want a change of government, you want a change of direction for the country, the Liberal Democrats are the people to vote for to guarantee that. Because we're second to the Tories in something like 80 seats in the south of England, and we have seats in Scotland, and we're challenging the SNP here. We're also challenging Labour in a few places in the UK. So if you want an MP who will work for your constituency and a party who will focus on the NHS, on education.
I think it's difficult to talk about your record on the NHS as Lib Dems, given that you were literally in government during the Lansley reforms. I don't think we can really take that ever seriously. And her talking about, we're in second place, we're best poised to beat the SNP or the Tories, has real big Lib Dems winning here energy. Although, to be fair, they are definitely people who will be able to knock down the blue wall come the election period, because most Tories seem to be very happy voting for the Liberal Democrats. I wonder why.
On fixing the crippling mess that the economy's in, then vote for us.
In terms of the NHS policy, the Labour Party and the Tories have pledged to reduce NHS waiting lists. How would you say the Lib Dems policy is different or distinct from those?
Well, we specifically want to employ 8,000 more GPs. Now, that's going to cost £1 billion a year. But we would also make some changes to the contract and the pension contract, because one of the things that a lot of GPs have come to me with over the past few years is that at the moment, they are disincentivised from staying on past a certain age because the pensions on their penalties in the pension, are so huge that
This feels like listening to Wes Streeting to me. It just feels like, I know there's massive problems with the NHS in terms of capital investment and doctors' salaries and all the money we need to spend on upgrades on technology and capacity and staffing and all that kind of malarkey. And then what's your answer to this? Well, we just actually need to change some contracts a bit and have AI. It's the same kind of waffle that doesn't really fix the fundamental problems.
We would change that to enable them to stay longer.
I think the question is, though, is exactly how does your policy differ from Labour's? I know you've mentioned the 8,000 GPs there. Labour aren't necessarily going into the exact numbers of GPs, but they are also talking about changing some elements of the contract. They're also talking about, use of the private sector. Where is the difference? Where's the point of difference?
Well, I think the point of difference is that we are specifically talking about the GPs. We're also concerned about the state of buildings. A lot of buildings across the UK, the government have just left to decline and they're crumbling and people are having to work in horrible conditions. The other thing we want to do is make it possible for us all to be guaranteed to see a GP within a week because we address those shortages.
Okay, fixing the buildings will require capital investment. Being able to have extra staffing levels will require investment. What's your plan for investment? Or are you just going to again say, we're going to do the good things but not the bad things? Again, it's the same kind of, as has been pointed out in chat, quote-unquote sticking plaster politics that we see from the other parties on this issue.
That, if you like, is a point of difference. That's what we want to address.
Now, Christine, you're a Scottish MP and the Tories and Labour have a serious eye on picking up or defending seats that have basically, there's been wobbles about the SNP, right? So given that, I actually want to put a question to you from one of our listeners. So this is Michael Bibby. Michael used to be a card-carrying member of the Labour Party and is wondering where he should go next. He asks, given Ed Davey's stated aim to replace the SNP as the third party in Westminster, exactly how much of a voice would that leave for the people of Scotland within the UK Parliament? Let's face it, a vote for the Lib Dems in Scotland is just that, a vote for the Lib Dems. They're a UK party. So how can you convince Scots that they would genuinely act as their voice in Parliament if they vote for them?
Yeah, very good question, given the rise of the SNP, specifically in Scotland, to wipe out every other party in Westminster and Scotland in 2015, was off the back of the Liberal Democrats screwing up the entire country by going into coalition with the Conservatives and abandoning everything that they said that they would hold dear to them in 2010 during the actual election. So you don't support the Scottish people because the Scottish people abandoned everything that you stood for as coalition partners.
Well, Michael's completely wrong, because a vote for the Lib Dems in Scotland is a vote for the Scottish Liberal Democrats. We are a federal organisation, unlike the Labour Party, so we do have a great deal of autonomy. You don't have to be a member of the SNP to represent Scotland. And as for Labour, well, you know, they're so centralised. Yes, they have Scottish MPs. Hopefully they'll have more Scottish MPs and there'll be fewer SNP MPs after the election. But they have to get away from this, because that was their big shortcoming the last time. They got carried away with the whole Labour hegemony in Scotland and thought that nobody could ever challenge them and nobody would ever challenge them. So they became lazy and they took Scottish votes for granted. So the Labour Party needs to accept that they are not the only voice in Scotland. There are other voices in Scotland. And I don't want to see them make the same mistake again.
But Christy,
Well, Labour abandoned in Scotland because they didn't break from the neoliberal consensus that Scottish people wanted to break from, which you also played into when you went into coalition with the Conservatives. This is why Scotland went to the SNP, because they were the only people offering an economic alternative. It's why Labour increased their vote share in Scotland in 2017, when somebody who was slightly progressive was in charge of the party in Labour. Of course, Scottish Labour at the time was also kind of different. You think about people like Richard Leonard, blah, blah, it's obviously a different kind of political campaign in that area, so that's why they didn't do as well as they could have done. But you know, the reason why the SNP became the de facto Scottish party is because they were the only people offering any kind of different to the economic consensus, which you supported, the Tories supported, and also Labour supported, which is why they got wiped out.
Christine, if we're talking about the sort of the problem of legacy for all of the various parties, for people of my generation, the student fee increase that happened under the Lib Dem Tory coalition and the decision that Nick Clegg made to join the coalition and prop up the Cameron government that started off these 14 years of Tory rule is a kind of broken promise and a break in trust that a lot of my generation are going to find very, very difficult to shift in their mind and with their outlook towards the Liberal Democrats. Why should people my age trust the Liberal Democrats now in 2020?
I mean, they should have been destroyed as a party. They should have been politically irrelevant forever. They should never have been allowed to recover from 2015 because that should have been the death knell for the party. They supported the worst government basically of all time, I think, in this country. The Cameron-era administration from 2010 to 2016 when he resigned, that is literally the worst period in terms of governance of this country. Basically, since Lord North, probably. Like, that's how bad that period was, and the Lib Dems were accomplices throughout the entire thing. Like, they should have died forever.
24 after what happened in 2010.
We're in a very, very different situation now. And I think if you look at 2015 and you look at the government before 2015, and you look after 2015 and the policies in both periods, you'll see that when you had the Liberal Democrats, you in government with the Tories, and believe me, it was a battle every day, you had a very different approach. You didn't have the same sort of chaos. You had 5 years of stability.
What stability? You had riots in the streets in 2011. There were multiple riots. The country was on fire. Oh, but we had the Olympics, though, so it's fine, I guess. It was pre-Brexit. The only thing that causes chaos is Brexit, apparently, according to Liberal Democrats. No, there were literal riots in the street. 330,000 people died. That's not a stable country. Might be stable for all the mortgage-holding, like, middle-aged people who vote for the Liberal Democrats. Again, got to remember, in 2019, for example, out of working-age people, the biggest electoral cohort for the Liberal Democrats was people who earned six figures. That shows you who vote Lib Dem, right? The country was literally in chaos throughout the entire period. I lived in Salford throughout that entire period. Like, I saw the chaos firsthand.
5 years of stability, but also an introduction of austerity economics that has kind of ravaged our public sector and is a huge factor in why it's difficult to see a GP now.
It wouldn't have mattered who was in government then. We would have had to have that sort of situation. Remember, when we went into the general election in 2010, the country was in a mess financially.
I would push back.
That's literally fundamentally untrue. Again, I will go back to the Simon Wren-Lewis article that I bring up every single time. There is zero economic evidence to show that being a country with a high debt to GDP ratio is a bad thing for your economy. There is never ever a necessity for austerity. If you go watch the Money and Macro video about the failure of British austerity, just shows you, again, even the only thing that's doing, no MMT here, forget MMT, just like a regular Keynesian framework, doing austerity to try and like cut your way to growth is a terrible thing, even in normal economic times. But it's even worse, it's even more stupid, harebrained, politically and economically illiterate nonsense to do it during a liquidity trap. Interest rates were at zero, nobody was investing. This is when you're supposed to do Keynesian stimulus, and you still took money out of the NHS, you still took money out of our schools, you still took money away from the poor and the disabled, which you helped democide. 330,000 people died whilst you were in government with the Conservative Party, and you still did that during a liquidity trap. It's basic Keynesian economics that you don't take money out of the economy during a recession when interest rates are at zero, and the Tories and the Liberal Democrats did it. There was no reason to do this at all. But you know what I mean? Remember what I said before about this idea that the Liberal Democrats believe in nothing and just take whatever position that they think is worth doing? Okay, Labour were in power in 2010. We need to look like the right-wing party to be able to look like a different party to the Labour Party. We'll become the austerity party, or we'll become the classical liberal economic party. Or what? The Conservatives are in power for 14 years. Public services about, oh, well, we're the progressive party of public services. We want NHS investment. We want to tax the rich. We want council housing. We're not going to be like, no, not like the Tories bad, but they were bad when Labour were bad. No, so we used to be different to what the current political party are offering, outside of always being NIMBYs, because that's what Liberal Democrats do in seats. They literally, in Amersham and Chesham by-election, campaigned against the Tories, trying to push through planning reform, making it easier to build new houses, because they were campaigning on a right-wing NIMBY platform. As simple as that. Like, they just take whatever position is convenient for them. And you bet, right? You bet that when Labour are in power, when Keir Starmer wins, and the debt to GDP ratio doesn't go down, they'll do exactly what they did to Gordon Brown in 2010 and say, the economy is bad, we need to do austerity, we have to cut back. There's nothing that we can do. Look at Labour, they're fiscally profligate. The debt to GDP ratio isn't coming down as fast as they would. Look, you can't trust them with the economy. You mark my words, if Ed Davey miraculously becomes the leader of the opposition, he will immediately pivot to fiscal deficit hawk. Immediately he'll do it. You know that it will happen. You know that it will happen. Because they have to market themselves as being different to the status quo. Because they believe in nothing and have zero principles. That's it. That is what that they will do. Mark my words.
Very, very strongly on that, Christine. I don't think
you should read Liam Burns' note. Liam Burns' note in the Treasury that there was no money left.
Well, I mean, that
it's literally doing the Greg Hands meme. Because you know Greg Hands still has the Liam Burn note in his wallet that he carries around everywhere. The fact that the Liberal Democrat person here is going, look at the note that Liam Burn left, which is just like a choreographed joke in the Treasury. This shows you how right-wing these Liberal Democrat people are. They're very happy to parrot conservative nonsense, illiterate, economically illiterate, bogus conservative nonsense, if they think that it's electorally viable for them. Just do not vote for the Liberal Democrats, folks. Like, these people, this is what they like.
I think that's at best a very poorly phrased and timed joke that's been blown out of proportion. I don't think austerity was an economic inevitability. I think it was a political decision that's been repackaged and resold as an economic necessity. I would very strongly push back that was necessary.
Where we were in 2010 as a country demanded that we had a government and we had a hung parliament. The Labour Party couldn't make up the numbers. It wouldn't have.
You could have still had a minority government that could have passed legislation if you'd gone into coalition. When you take into account Sinn Féin and the Speaker, and like the odd confidence and supply from all of the minority parties in Northern Ireland, for example, you absolutely could have gone into coalition with the Labour Party and a minority government. That would have been absolutely fine. Like, stop trying to justify the democide that you enabled, Christine.
Right. So we had the choice of either letting the country disintegrate almost economically or support a government for 5 years. And we did that. Now, did we make mistakes? Yes, absolutely. Have we learned from them? Yes, absolutely.
No, you haven't learned from them. When have you ever apologised for the Royal Mail sell-off? Vince Cable still thinks it was the right thing to do. Do you think Polly Mackenzie ever thought that it was bad that she traded 5p bag charges for tougher benefit? sanctions? Like, no, these people have zero contrition. They just think that doing a video where they say they're sorry for voting to raise tuition fees is enough to atone for the absolute monstrous policy they inflicted on the country.
And I think you'll find that there are a lot of us who were badly burned by that experience emotionally and politically. We felt that there were a lot of things that we weren't comfortable with. But at the same time, we felt that what we had to do was put the country first. That we knew it wasn't the best thing for the party, but we felt that we had to.
True, the best thing for the country was 330,000 dead poor people. I agree.
Accept that it was the best thing for the country.
I think some of the anxieties around the Liberal Democrats, you know, following up from what Nish said, and of course, you know, I was personally affected by that student fee betrayal, so I remain very salty about it. But you know, I think there's a question of who are the Liberal Democrats? What do they believe in? What are their values? You know, it was are they a left of centre party? Do they believe in public spending? Like, what is the vision of the Liberal Democrats?
What we want to see is a fairer society. We are mostly left of centre. We believe in a free market economy, but we want a fair society. And
okay, so you're not a left winger then. If you believe in a free market economy, you are not a left winger. You are on the right. This is classical liberalism, or at the very least, like social liberalism, but like a right-wing flavour. Like, we want a fair free market society. Okay, so you're going to have like wealth taxes? You're going to nationalise key industries that have inelastic markets? You're going to do any of these things? Or you're just going to stand around looking, well, look how free our market is. This is freedom, right?
Want a fair deal for people, and to do that you need an economy which is working. So you get the economy working, but you don't do that. I would say the Tories
get the economy working means nothing. Again, this is what you try and pin them down on an ideological framework and say free market, fair society with the things that work. And I'm like, that means literally nothing. It means nothing.
Do that in order to create wealth. For me, as a Liberal Democrat, what I want to do is have a strong economy to create opportunities for everybody, to create equality.
What equality have you ever created? Either way, that was absolutely miserable. But yeah, screw the Liberal Democrats and screw her. I cannot believe she defends the coalition. Imagine being a Liberal Democrat and not just like crying with your heads in your hands going, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. No, actually defending the coalition. Unbelievable scenes. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.